Hi everyone, I'm here with your February market update where we'll dive into specific market data for specific areas in Simcoe County for the month of January. My name is Ben Robitaille and I'm a realtor with Royal LePage In Touch Realty in Midland, Ontario. I serve all of Simcoe County and parts of southern Muskoka, but if you're looking for real estate help anywhere in Canada, I can help connect you to the right people right across the country. So let's dive in. First, we'll look at Midland. So the average sale price in Midland rose in December from $480,000 to $539,000. Now, it's important with these smaller communities to look at the number of sales because we're basing that average this month off of 13 sales only. The amount of time it takes to sell your house went down in January quite drastically, again with a small sample size, but from 28 in December to 14 in January. And the number of new listings on the market went from 12 to 31. So this is a big jump from December, but that is normal for this time of year. In terms of amount of actual inventory, still rather low in Midland because if we look at month supply, we're actually seeing a continued decrease. So when people say we're in a buyer's market, because supply is actually so low, I tend to argue we're more in a balanced market. Although it feels like a buyer's market because it's been a seller's market for 2+ years during the pandemic. Now let's look at Penetang. So the average sale price in Penetang for January was $600,000, and that's up from $500,000 in December. But once again, looking at the number of sales, we're based off one house sale. So we can't really pull anything from that data specifically. The number of new listings did go up from 4 to 11. Small increase, but once again, rather low. If we look at inventory as a whole, month supply stayed the same at going from 2.8 to 2.9. Days on market is fairly consistent as well, going from 38 to 45. Now moving on to Tiny Township. Tiny Township saw an increase in their average sale price from $898,000 to $1.115 million. Now, Tiny does have a lot of waterfront property, and waterfront for the most part is held strong throughout these interest rate increases. But once again, the number of sales is quite low, so we're basing this off 7 sales in January. If we look at inventory, a little bit higher than the rest of the region, so we're going from 5.2 months supply to 5.8 months supply. If we isolate it, you could call this more of a buyer's market. But once again, sample size is so small that it's hard to really say with 100% certainty that that is actually what it is. Next, we'll look at Tay Township. So average price stayed about the same for January, going from $538 to $564. Once again, small sample size. This is based off 8 sales. The number of new listings decreased slightly for January, which is a little odd, but we went from 15 in December to 14 in January. And if we look at inventory, it's actually getting smaller and smaller, which makes sense here. So 2.6 in December to 2.2 in January. Next, looking at Oro-Medonte, average sale price here increased once again from $860 to $1.12. Now the number of sales, a bit better of a sample size, went from 14 to 15. If we look at the number of new listings, small increase here, normal for this time of year, going from 21 to 29. But month supply is staying rather low, going from 2.3 to 2.2. Anything under 3 months, in my opinion, really indicates a lean towards a seller's or balanced market, depending on what's going on with buyers. So in this case, I would call this a balanced market in Oro. Now let's look at Severn. So the average sale price in Severn decreased drastically from $1.36 million to $824,000. But once again, let's look at the number of sales. We went from 2 in December, which will, if the 2 houses that sold were expensive, of course, is going to drive that average price way up versus 16 in January. Looking at the month supply, so we have 2.5 months supply in December, and we go to 2.4. Once again, numbers in this area lead me to conclude that we're in a balanced market in Severn. Next, let's take a look at Orillia, Ontario. So the average sale price in Orillia went from $634,000 in December to $636,000 in January. For all intents and purposes, no change. Number of sales, we've got a bit better of a sample size here, gone from 14 to 22. The number of new listings on the market increased, normal for this time of year, but as you can see, nowhere near the highs of the summer of last year, going from 25 in December to 68 in January. Now our month's supply in Orillia rose slightly from 1.8 to 2.1. But again, these numbers are low and houses are taking longer to sell on average. So it doesn't necessarily feel like it's a balanced market when you're out there, but the data suggests that it's in fact balanced. Next, let's look at Barrie. So the average sale price in Barrie stayed consistent from $708 to $726. The number of sales in Barrie also rose slightly, going from 69 to 90 in January. The number of new listings, once again, no surprise here, rose from 104 to 208 in January. Now, even though this number is doubled, you can see we're nowhere near the peaks that we were of last summer. And if we look at month supply for Barrie, still a very low number at 1.3 in December, rising to 1.5 in January, but it's not really fixing our supply issue. Next, let's look at the municipality of Springwater. So the average sale price in Springwater rose slightly from 1.116 in December to 1.183 in January. The number of sales also rose slightly from 12 in December to 16 in January. The number of new listings also up, going from 21 to 35 for January. And once again, if we look at month supply, a little bit better in Springwater. We went from 3.3 down slightly to 3.2, but this is a little bit better in terms of inventory. Next up, Wasaga Beach. So let's look at the average sale price first. Rose quite drastically from $629 in December to $756, but even for a community the size of Wasaga, the number of sales is quite small, so we're going from 21 to 18 in all of January. The number of new listings on the market went from 33 to 70, which is going to help our month's supply, but we're still just over that threshold of what I might start to consider a buyer's market. When everyone said the market was down 20%, we had a little bit more inventory on the market, but now supply is coming back down, which is balancing things out a little bit. Finally, let's look at Collingwood. So the average sale price rose slightly in January, going from $872 in December to $894 in January. Now the number of sales, fairly small, going from 26 to 24. The number of new listings in Collingwood rose fairly significantly, going from 34 in December to 74 in January, almost doubling, bringing us closer to what we would expect for hopefully a regular spring market. However, if we look at month supply, we're just over that 3 mark, where we went from 3.2 in December to 3.5 in January. Now last, let's look at Simcoe County as a whole. Because it is a larger sample size, it'll give us more of a big picture of what's actually going on out there, and maybe we can pull some larger trends with more data. So the average sale price across Simcoe County did rise slightly in January, going from $801 in December to $819 in January. This seems to be pretty consistent with what I see going on out there in the market. The number of sales also did increase slightly, going from 243 to 284 in all of Simcoe County. But as you can see, compared to the peaks of what was going on during that crazy market, we're very low in terms of number of transactions, and that trend I think will continue throughout most of the year while we have these higher interest rates. The number of new listings did come up, which is fairly consistent for this time of year as we head into spring, going from 383 in December to 766 in January. However, looking at months supply, we're still a fairly low number. So we went from 2.2 to 2.4. So even though buyer demand has dropped off with the increase in interest rates, the amount of supply out there is still small. So that's why we're not seeing this huge market crash that people were worried about and that headlines were writing about like crazy. And for all those people out there who are trying to time the market and get in when like house prices are at the bottom, I think we're near that point. I think if we hit a recession, whether it's a technical recession or full-blown recession, I think when those interest rates drops, you're going to see house prices take off again. So this has been your February market update. If you have any specific questions, go to my website. It's in the description down below. I'm always happy to chat, set aside some time, and help answer any questions or address any myths or facts or anything you hear in the news about real estate. We can talk about the actual data and what's going on in the world right now of real estate. If you've made it this far in the video, consider hitting that like button. If you really like this video, consider subscribing, and until then, we'll see you in the next video.